Assalamualaikum everyone. Before we start, please take a look at the screen in case you guys want to choose your own topics. So Group A will be discussing those two problem statements, and Group B will be discussing community advocacy on social media.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, that means peace and blessings be upon you from God. And Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, standing on the shoulders of giants. If you guys use Google Scholar a lot, you will know that that is the motto of Google Scholar, standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think it's extremely appropriate that we begin this panel by acknowledging that we are standing on the shoulders of giants in the community, the giants who started AMP, who were there from the very first convention. Some of them are here in this room. So, Chedarki, I think Chenailo, Dr. Raza, C. Kusuki as well. So, and Professor Hussein, of course, Mr. Alami Musa, Mr. Yamrazadi, who recently passed on. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that so that we know where we came from and how we move forward and what they did right, what we haven't been doing right, or what can be improved on. And that is really the spirit in which today is going to go. And we are really here to ideate, and we are really here to solution together, and hopefully that is the spirit that all of us take this session with. Okay? So let me introduce myself first. I'm Walid Jumdan Abdullah, and I am part of the panel on community advocacy together with Encik Nailul that I mentioned just now, Mr. Hairil, Lastrina, and Suryani, and they are all here somewhere at the tables. And you'll hear more from them later on during the panel dialogue. They'll be doing the presentation as well. So I'm just going to briefly talk for 10 minutes, hopefully for the next 10 minutes, and I'm just going to share some key findings and what is the objective, how this particular session is going to go, what are our problem statements, and what is expected of everyone here today. Okay? So we will have the panel dialogue at 12, not 11:45, right? Because just now we exceeded. Okay, so you are expected, required, requested, I guess that's a better word, requested to read and reflect on the problem statement and later on cluster ideas. The facilitators will help you with this, and you identify top two concepts per problem statement. And again, not to worry, the facilitators will help you with this. But basically, the primary thing is support for Muslim professionals to play more significant roles in strengthening communities. And the secondary thing is encouraging Islamic values in promoting advocacy. I know you have some questions. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer them in the next few slides. So, we have chosen, especially for the secondary thing, we have chosen to use a minimalist understanding of Islamic values. Right? What do I mean? We do not wish to get into which value is Islamic in terms of the liberal conservative debate. There's a debate to be had, but not a debate to be had in this panel. So we will use a minimalist understanding, meaning the values that anybody, liberal, conservative, Sufi, Salafi, Shia, or everyone can agree. The value of humility, the value of serving others before self, those sorts of values. So we have started discussing this since January, so for about 10 months. The panel has been doing this. So all of the problem statements are based on our series of extensive discussions with and based on the data that we had, based on the data that has been presented, which was excellent. Also based on our own panel data, we did a couple of things. One was the survey, which we got good responses for, even though there may be some problems with the sampling because it's convenient sampling. The other is FGDs, with focus group discussions with targeted individuals, community advocates. And these were the problem statements that we came up with were in response to all of those findings. Okay, so again, the definition. So Muslim professionals, I mean, that's a given. Community advocates, anyone who speaks on issues pertaining to the community. And the idea is that you do not, today, advocacy is very different from advocacy when PMP started. Right? You had to be part of an organization, or if you do not want to be part of an organization, you form your own organization. But now, every other person can be an advocate, oftentimes is an advocate. I see Yuli is here, and she's from Lipat Conversations, right? Not part of any formal organization. All you need is an Instagram page, right? And you can be an advocate. And a lot of times that's what a lot of advocates today are. As I said, minimalist understanding of Islamic values. And some of the findings that we got, again, family, the most important thing, and people were extremely concerned with the weakening of religiosity and faith. And I think even though that will be discussed by the family panel, it's okay if there are some things pertaining to that come up in our discussions later on. And this, I think these are quite intuitive, and I don't have that much time, so I'll just go through the very important ones. And where a lot of respondents felt there was an improvement needed was providing a voice for the community and influencing government decisions. They always ask, so what? Right? So after you advocate, what happens then? Right? Can actual change occur? So that's what we're going to discuss today. And some reasons people do not join Muslim organizations. First of all, of course, it's time. Second of all, the perception of them being an exclusive club, invite only. And third is desire for autonomy, of course. If you are in an organization, you are more constricted and circumscribed in what you can see. And for women in advocacy, I think this is a finding that's consistent. We found that many institutional and or cultural barriers exist for women in their decisions to become CAs, community advocates. And there's a need always, women always tell us that there is a need for husbands to support them more, there's a need for allies. And more women, of course, are needed on boards of directors. For the barriers against community advocacy, the culture of paranoia, this is not a Muslim perception. I think this is a Singaporean perception, a Singaporean problem, where people are afraid to be known as activists because of fear of reprisal, whether it's political or whether it's social. And there is a tendency for concerns to be dismissed by those in authority. This is what a lot of our interviews told us. They would say that, oh, this is not a problem in Singapore. This may be a problem elsewhere, but it's not a problem in Singapore. And also there is an internalization of stereotypes within the community, which may affect advocacy negatively. People may be dissuaded from helping the community. And you saw some hints of this in the skit just now, where people have a certain idea of Malays and of certain jobs, of the rental flats and so on. And social media, of course, it is not only a necessary tool for advocacy or useful tool of advocacy. Social media is inevitable, it is the reality. So there is a need, but there's still a need to be mindful. So in terms of narcissism, and that will affect advocacy in terms of who are you doing the advocacy for. Antagonistic behaviors and echo chambers, and of course, social media may pigeonhole us in our own circles, and we may not be able to be exposed to other people who think differently from us. So the problem statement one, so this is for group A, so take note of your table. The Muslim community in Singapore perceives a need for more community advocates. However, factors such as lack of time, perceptions of rigidity in Muslim organizations, and fear of reprisals hinder Muslim professionals from stepping forward. So, what we need to discuss, how do we overcome this, and what Islamic values should be promoted in strengthening advocacy. Problem statement 2 for Group A, Muslim women today carry the burden of multiple cultural societal expectations, being expected to work while juggling responsibilities at home. And there is also, conversely, there is also a negative perception by some towards women who choose to be homemakers. These expectations hinder their effective participation in community advocacy. So, what can we do to support women to become community advocates or to engage in more community advocacy? And can Islamic values be used to redefine or navigate cultural and societal expectations? So that's for Group A. For Group B, social media provides an environment that breeds narcissism and it potentially affecting how advocacy is carried out. As a result, individuals may be more interested in likes and shares rather than actual advocacy. Well, this is not a problem statement about me. And how do we encourage effective advocacy on social media despite this challenge? How do we build on the strengths of community advocates against social media? Using social media, and which Islamic values can be encouraged. Now, I may have said that whimsically, but I actually do mean it is about me as well. And I think to honestly come up with solutions, we need to have a deep sense of self-reflection. This can happen to anybody. I know this happens to me. Right? Just this morning, I was checking how many likes I got. And this is a problem, and I understand it's a problem. So, how do we overcome this problem? And the second problem statement, the design of social media may cause individuals to remain in their own circles, engaging mostly like-minded individuals, and this may hinder constructive discussions on complex issues. So how do we overcome the echo chambers, and again, what Islamic values? So we try as much as possible to inculcate again the minimalist understanding of Islamic values, right? And final one, problem statement 3, there is a lack of etiquette or adab when conversing online. There is a need to agree to disagree and be passionate without being disrespectful. So how do we foster this? What Islamic values can we encourage? So I think all of us are adult enough. I do not need to emphasize rules as if we don't get enough emphasis on rules all the time. But just Chatham House rules for today. I think I trust that all of us will be respectful to each other. So we will do this. So review the problem statement, you ideate solutions, and your facilitators will guide you along the way. Okay, and I will from time to time remind you of the time. Okay? So good luck and all the best. Okay, no need for applause. 11:05, you're supposed to move on to problem statement 2. So make sure you do trust the ideas before that. For group A, it will be 11:15 because group A has more problem statements. Thank you. So this is what we are going to do. So Group A will vote on the Group A problem statements, the solutions, and then we will choose the top two, and then we will have a discussion on that. The groups that suggested that will be invited to share a little bit about those suggestions, but everyone is expected to participate as well. Okay, so you guys can start. So let's go to A. So we will choose top two from each problem statement. Uh, can you switch? You guys log into Pigeonhole yourself as well, and then vote. So for Group B, you vote on the Group B problem statements as well, the solutions. Oh, this group voted on it. Uploading. Okay. Yes, please vote quietly. And don't worry, voting is secret like our elections. Can all the scribes move to the table so that we can consolidate? So all the scribes, thank you so much for all your effort and work today. Not that it has ended, as in I'm just thank you. So the table at the front. Table at the front, to my right. So we have promote more genuine representations of our community by engaging media companies without any agenda and steering away from gimmicky and damaging. It's changing. Rebranding narratives from self-help to advocacy. Okay. That's an interesting one. Okay, so for Group B, you guys can vote for the problem statements for your group also. We'll discuss them later, but please vote for your own problem statements, as in the ones that you're assigned to, because you have more, hopefully by now you have more intimate knowledge about it, or at least some reflections on it. Okay, I think let's start. So rebranding narratives from self-help to advocacy. So which group was the one that suggested this? Oh, this group, yeah. I'm not surprised that it's this group. So anyone from this group? Okay.
Okay, so I think when we talked about this, I think we talked about how we are operating in the mode of self-help group. So for example, any MMOs that we talk about, we always talk about self-help. And just by that, it has ingrained in us that our community is the one that needs help. So we thought that this narrative needs to change. It requires a rebranding of sorts. And then a mode of advocacy is that we need to push for certain narratives to come forward. So for example, the perception that we need as a media, we are always a media organization, and our only touch point is our own community. While that may be our primary objective, we need to start pushing for this narrative that these organizations are able to not just support our own community, but as well as the less developing or less fortunate within our. So in that sense, while it may still couch under help, but we need to start pushing the narratives beyond our community as a group that requires certain help. And also, to improve the way we sell volunteerism, right? It's also a way for us to see how we can spend time with our families and building our net worth and our network.
Just you guys are going through all your solutions. It's all the solution.
So also as an advocate, right, we are looking at also advocating in terms of our community's self-reliance, the concept of wakaf beyond material wealth. So this in terms of wakaf in terms of expertise within our community, wakaf in terms of resources, materials, information, and then we have endowments to support our community work. Currently, right now, I think our community is heavily reliant on donations, and we need to probably have some sort of self-independence in terms of community wealth.
Thank you so much, brother. Yeah, you guys can applaud if you want. If you want. So, thank you so much. And I think there was a lot in what Brother Haikal said, especially not using the term self-help and instead using advocacy. I think this is an excellent suggestion. I hope there's someone from Anaki here. And the other one is moving beyond the community and going to the national level, right? Brother Haikal, did I misinterpret? Okay, so excellent suggestions. By the way, if we do not manage to discuss these suggestions, we will still be putting them in the post-convention report, the good ones. So do not fret. Anyone wants to add on to what the group has said? Because you guys voted for it, so I assume somebody else has something to say. Yeah. Yes, you guys can question each other as well if you want.
Actually, it's just a clarification. I didn't understand the first point. Maybe you could clarify.
Which one? The self-help to advocacy?
Yeah.
So from self-help to advocacy, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, all along when we have been talking about organizations, and when we talk about Malay Muslim organizations, it's always couched in this narrative that Malay Muslim organizations are out there as self-help communities. Right? So, we are trying to change, or we should change the narrative from self-help to something beyond that. Right? So we advocate or going down the narrative of advocacy, where we talk about certain narratives about pushing the community expertise, for example. So instead of saying that, our community is lagging in terms of certain things, we can always say that, look, our community has this kind of expertise where people can come to us, right? Instead of us always going to other communities for help or expertise. Yeah. That's one example.
We actually talk about something quite interesting in the sense that while economically our community is lagged, but I think we should go beyond measurement of just economic value, even though those are important. There are many communities that recognize the resilience of the Muslim community. And as we move towards SG100, where economic performance is almost a given for Singapore, I think there's a lot of emptiness, spirituality that actually needs to be shared, which if we are just talking about help, we don't have anything to give, but as an advocate, we have a lot to share.
Thank you, Brother Nailo. Anyone else? Can be questions, can be comments, can be suggestions. Yes, brother. We will get to you. So
just a thought, right? For community advocates like ourselves, I have this ideal in my mind that I actually discussed with my team. I think we should all aspire to make ourselves redundant in the future. And I think when we have that task force mentality, perhaps then it will be more effective. Or else I think it's just going to be rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You just see newer faces in the future, and the problem will still exist. And I think we should aspire more.
Sorry, can you continue saying you are? Higher. Okay, brother. How do we make ourselves redundant? Okay, carry on, Farah, then we'll get to that.
Alright, hi on. So I totally agree with you that we need to be redundant because we're going to die in the future anyway. So if we don't hand down the skill sets, then what's the point of being community advocate, right? We are looking at the systemic solutions. Our group's not giving sweeping statements, but we're looking at the solutions, which is so that it prevents the rinse and repeat cycle, which is to literally learn to be effective community advocates by getting the skill set imparted to you from other community advocates, so that rinse and repeat doesn't happen, and so that the older community advocates, doesn't have to run on a very tight bandwidth, but there is this, what's the word for it? Yeah, you have other people coming up to have the skill sets to be community advocates. Sorry for the lack of words. And then the other thing is so that they learn how to analyze and discuss policies, how to write proposals, how to do budgeting, how to find sources of funding. Like all this information are not accessible for community advocates, and then they get burnt out. So to prevent that burnt out from happening, we need to make all this the systems accessible for community advocates to be effective community advocates, and then we can become redundant and prevent that rinse and repeat.
Sorry, sister, just to clarify what I meant when I say redundant, I actually meant the community advocacy work. That work. Not to pass on to the next generation, because then that would be totally what I'm not signing up for. So the concept of zakat, for example, when we talk about zakat, when I understood it when I was studying in SEF, is that we are supposed to give the beneficiary in the hope that it will elevate their status so that they will become givers, zakat givers, and not just dependents. And I think that concept is lacking here, which I think if you talk about Islamic values, that's a very key point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think those are two different points. I think we will take note. I think there were two, Mr. Rahman Huri, but before that, the gentleman beside him. Can you introduce yourself as well, sir?
Sure. My name is Ivan Craig from Sociology in NUS. Actually, I like the idea that the very first idea that was suggested about moving the narrative from self-help to advocacy for one simple reason. For the longest time, I think the Malay community, even Muslim community, right, have been described within the framework of the problematic. That there is a Malay problem, for example. And self-help, the idea of help, begins with the starting point that there is a problem that we need to help them with. So that is why I find this shift very interesting. Advocacy, the idea of advocacy, means you open up to a whole range of possibilities, a whole range of what you can deal with. But that also is where some people might think it's a bit tricky, right? The openness of that. Anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Quick, can you continue saying? So what do you mean when it's tricky?
Well, for example, one very clear example would be the language of rights. You could advocate for rights, or some kind of rights, one kind of right or another. Okay? And we do know from experience that rights is not exactly a language that the government is exactly very happy about.
Okay, so basically it's going to ruffle some political factors. Okay, thank you. Mr. Raman, thank you so much.
I think we did not plan, but he sort of mom the thing. So I think when we talk about advocacy, I think the content is very important. What is it that we want to advocate? We have, we are dealing. Let's take the play that we just saw. Right? How do we deal with those realities? It's not easy. Those are real life issues that community as a whole are grappling with for years. And we have done many things over a long time. We have Mendaki, we have ANP, we have Muhammadiyah, we have Jamia, and so on. All doing a lot of things, a lot of good things. But what is that one thing that we need to convey to the community with a hope that really we can get out of this hole that we are in? Prof mentioned about rights, right? There are things that are pulling us back. There are sensitive things that we are not talking about as a community. I think those are issues that we should begin to talk about beyond just dealing with the symptoms of the problem that we face. We've got to look at what is it that's causing this problem that we have faced over so many years. Many of these good works are already done by those in the academia. They have done a lot of research to identify some of the things that is pulling us down. Among them are, for example, government policies that are hampering the progress of our community. But we don't have a chance to talk about this in public space, and we need to begin that conversation, I believe, and put it in such a way that our desire to move away from the position in which we are a problem community, that we are trying to self-help ourselves, become different. Because we really have good things that we can talk about the community, that can inspire our community, that can give direction to the community, and importantly, give hope that in 20, 30 years' time, we can see that change takes place. Things are not working to our advantage because the country is moving very fast, and we are not catching up as fast. Nonetheless, we need to have hope that a new generation of people who is fully aware and building upon the good works that our brother mentioned earlier of ANP, for example, and begin to have those difficult conversations on policies that have to change, that we can get hold of many individuals who have succeeded amidst the difficulty that we face, and have that real program to move us to the next level. I think you get the
Thank you so much, Mr. Damanuri. So I think I hear a few. I think this is a concrete suggestion that even if it's not done at the policy level, at our level, we can actually start referring to these groups as advocacy instead of self-help groups already. Maybe a change in the lexicon. And also there's some stuff about government policies. Maybe this is an opportune time for me to remind you guys that DPM Lawrence Wong will be here later on. Some of these issues can be taken up during the dialogue. Dr. Harun?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sorry, I must qualify that I wasn't here this morning. I came in a bit late because I had something on. And some of these points may have been covered earlier. Just two broad points. On Haikal's point about shifting from self-help to advocacy almost makes it sound like it's mutually exclusive. But I think we can be both self-help and still be firm advocates of our causes and what we need to do. I think there's value in putting the word self-help there because it also tells us that the solutions can come organically within the community. And in some of the issues in our community, for example, I'm a healthcare professional. Health, a lot of it, sometimes in terms of our health habits, are also culturally driven to some extent. And there are some things we can tweak to the extent that we can actually solve the solution. And I think the term self-help has its place within some of the work that we do. The other thing that strikes me also is that we're in a room where there's a bit of bias in that we're all professionals to some extent. We have the privilege of being able to attend today's conference. And I think our worldview is such that we have made good reasonably of ourselves and we're actually pushing forward to beyond the community and see how we can contribute. But as I wasn't there for the presentation this morning, but I saw some slides, for which we also understand that in terms of statistics, there is a bit of a long tail for us. We're still behind on many measures, and I think we also need to look inwardly to be able to bring up the tail so that we can all move forward together as a community. So just two broad points to
Thank you so much, Dr. Harun, who is, of course, the president, newly minted, can I say, of LBKM, a self-help advocacy group, right? Thank you so much. So I like that. I like the diversity in opinions. That's what we are here for. Okay. So let's move on to the second. Don't worry, you guys. Everybody will have a chance. To the second most voted suggestion, which is the third one. Okay. Promote more genuine representations of a community by engaging media companies without any agenda, and steering away from gimmicky and damaging images of our community. Anyone wants to go? We only have about 7 to 8 minutes for A. So anyone wants to go? Is it from that group? Yeah, carry on. Yeah, one. Yeah, okay. So Iza, carry on. Iza, yes.
Hello. Yes, hi everyone. So my name is Ina, and our group was the one who mentioned this or suggested this as one of the solutions. And I think we were thinking about how exactly, or why sometimes we are perceived and we perceive ourselves to be a certain way. So I guess kind of like an extension of what was discussed just now. It's because one of the reasons is to do with the way we are presented in the media, or Muslim communities are presented in the media. We talked about one article that came out a few years back, which is a Straits Times article on home-based learning, which one of table mate Nurin actually wrote in response to, and the article wanted to show different households in Singapore, how they did home-based learning, and the Malay household was presented in a very small house, and the father wasn't really there and things like that. And it's usually this kind of narratives that are more prevalent in the media. So because of that, and we keep seeing the same things again and again. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle lah. So we feel that to break away from that, we would need to promote better representations of our community that isn't gimmicky or that doesn't have any certain agenda. Because as we know, some videos, if they are presented by the government, there's this like agenda, okay, I need to push forward like budget plans or certain policies that I want to share with the country lah. So we feel that this would be a more genuine way to at least provide a refreshing perspective of the community.
Sorry, can you remain standing? So I just wanted to emphasize what Iza said as well. I don't know whether you guys saw that. I think the Malay family was making do with patchy devices. If I remember correctly, that was the and Nurin, who's there at the table she wrote a response that was shared by her father on Facebook, which went really viral. I'm sure 80% of you have read it. You guys don't know she was the one who wrote it, which eventually prompted the Straits Times editor to apologize for that portrayal. But I just wanted to ask Iza and your group mates as well, are media portrayals the cause or effect of stereotypes?
I think, off the top of my head, I think it's a lot of effects. It is the effects of stereotypes, because we know that there are some stereotypes that take place. So the people in media rooms, or the people who are the ones who pitch storyboards, the people who are in bodies that create a lot of collaterals or videos or things like that, they have already a certain perception of the community. And if, let's say, in that room, there's only one type of person or one type of race, and there's not much diversity, then the stereotypes will, like it or not, it will seep through the work that they do. And this isn't just in media lah, but because we are talking about media, it happens a lot, and the visual is very powerful. So I'd say like a lot of it is effects. But to challenge that, there are media bodies that want to steer away and deviate from stereotypical norms. And I think it is these kind of bodies or companies that we can engage or perhaps promote to share a different sort of narrative that is against the damaging ones that we have been conditioned to think about.
Thank you. So more Malay representation, Muslim representation in the media. Okay. Give her the mic. Yeah, give her the mic. Yeah.
And not the myth of the model minority, okay?
Yeah. So okay. So not the myth of the model minority. Okay. So I do want to get back to that later on. So if I don't, please remind me. So let's move on to problem statement 2 for Group A. 11 votes. Societal education on Islamic values and dialogues to cultivate support and understanding of gender equality through the Islamic lens. Which group was it? Okay, your group. Yes. So somebody from the group.
Okay, that's our group. So we were talking about how there's lack of there's lack of programs and initiatives that's geared towards women, that restores and affirm women, and prevent them from going to the gaps of tricky corporations. So we need more curation and of programs and initiatives that's geared towards women, and we need to make it accessible, like unconditionally accessible, which means that woman doesn't need to be, that woman can be a homemaker and can have access to the initiatives and programs, not just be a full-time working mom. And society education, so we were sharing about how patriarchy plays a large role in the problems that we have in the cultural context. Patriarchy in the cultural context. Okay, I'm not talking about Islamic context before I get red flag by anyone else here. Yeah. So we need to cultivate, yes, I have to highlight that. We need to cultivate dialogues that support, we need to have dialogues that cultivate support of women's role, of understanding how to support women. We need to have also an understanding on gender equality through the Islamic lens, not the cultural lens or the feminism lens, but the Islamic lens, and cultivate male allies. Not just male allies, but a society of allies.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's related to the second most voted suggestion, but there were 3 suggestions in that. Educating men, boys to normalize equal involvement, provide visual awareness, related to the earlier point made by Isa, and management and training is designated for women to be involved in community advocacy programs. Which group was it? Okay, so what type of training are we talking about? Who should be conducting this? And I'm thinking, are we not already doing it? Last year was of course the year of the women, right? In Singapore, and we had a motion in Parliament, so I'm sure people does sorts of things as well. So, okay, which group? So they're asking the men to speak. No, it's okay. There's a need for me.
I couldn't see. I'm sorry. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Oh, okay. Sorry. Assalamualaikum. I'm Dr. Azlan. Okay, educating men, boys to normalize. Sorry, I'm just reading. All right. So we're talking about the second question, where we want the men. Oh, sorry. We want this education system in Singapore to start educating both boy and girl since young about the importance of involvement of the men. Yeah, it has to start somewhere. I'm sorry, maybe the stage fright. Since you know, I'm just going to talk about PAP. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about bad about PAP. So when we ask the Gen X, for example, kau sekolah mana dulu? Oh, aku dulu sekolah PAP. This is the common answer, right? Because kindergarten last time is called PAP. So until you are today you are 40, 50 years old, you still remember, oh, I was a PhD student. Alright. So what I'm trying to put is that if you train them since young, since pre-primary, you have to be involved in the housework, to be involved to help the ladies. So this 20 years later, 40, 50, so the guys already seasoned, so they know that they have to be involved in the society. Because, is that correct? I'm not sure the correct question, I'm sorry. Alright, so post-World War II, that's where the problem started. A modern problem requires modern solution. Alright? So that's where, after the World War II, the industrial boom, that's where we need more labor and the lady comes into the workforce. So because of that, unfortunately, the ladies has to be involved, and living in Singapore with a high cost of living, we pity the ladies. Ladies work 24/7, come back, lots of things to do. So we have to get the guys have to be involved. So what I'm trying to say is that since from pre-primary, they have to be have that knowledge, be trained that they have to help in the household. So 20 years, 30 years from now, we will have this problem, inshallah, solved, where the guys. So what happened when the guys help the ladies has more time? So then they can be an advocate for the, they can start. So they can start be active in the community. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Doctor. So
Yeah, thanks.
It's not that I disagree. Of course, education is the way to go. But I'm always a bit not skeptical. That's not the right word. I cannot find the right word. I'm gonna use skeptical for now. For solutions which say we need more education, because there's a solution to everything. And it's sort of a given, right? So what sort of education are we really looking at? What is done that is not enough, and what needs to be done? What type of education? So you mentioned, so it's a specific level already, primary school. So what type of education specifically do we need that we are not doing now? I guess that's a question for us to put. Any final thoughts on this, because we are quite behind time? We have to move on to B, but I'll just Farah, carry on.
Hi everyone. I think I just want to bring up about the point about helping women. I think that's a challenging statement to make because you're not really helping women. You're just part of the household. So that being said, we really want to jump about the whole issue about having boys step up and whatnot. We do look at this issue as men stepping up against men who are prejudiced. So I think we wanted to bring up about how call-out culture between men themselves is really important. So yeah, I'm just going to bring that up. Yeah, something.
Sorry, can I just add? We were also discussing when we saw that, right, in terms of, you mentioned education. Is it really a problem or issue of education, or is it values? Because are we saying that the schools now have to teach our boys how to do things, or the kids how to do things? Yeah, I mean that's just an.
So you're saying it's parents who should be doing, it's not the job of the schools.
I mean, we are having that discussion, and also when we saw this, like, are we now going through the typical, or proposing to go through the typical route where everything falls back to the schools and for them to teach these values? Because if it's really a thing of value, then I think it starts from the family as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll just end off on this, and in the social science literature, there's a huge debate also, right, between parents or schools, and the argument for centralizing everything through schools is always because there are some people who do not have the typical family background, and then are those going to be excluded from this education? So I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that is a point, and that's something for us to think about together. So, any more final comments on this?
Is there anyone from Bapa here?
From Bapa?
Yeah.
Is it related to this?
Because if we are looking at point number 2 about women, and what Bapa is doing isn't really supporting point number 2, right? It's more father-child. But should Bapa also be looking, if we're not looking at education, schools can't do everything. But there are existing organizations like Bapa who can support women as well, because it's part of the whole family context.
I understand, but surely not every organization has to do every single thing.
But in Singapore, if we're looking at something that's women, we can count it PPIS.
Right. Okay.
You know,
Fair enough.
it's
Okay.
not many.
I take that point.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we need more organizations that will do this. Okay. All right. So sorry. Who else?
Not more organizations, but looking more closely at this.
Okay. More organizations looking closely into this.
Not more.
Oh.
Organizations.
Current? Yes. Yes. Understand. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Sorry. Oh, is there somebody from Bapa who wants to respond? No. Okay. No, okay. So it's okay. Yeah. So we can move on to the next one. So B. So there are more votes for this. By the way, if you have not uploaded, just upload because we'll still be using it for the post-convention report. So just upload the solution. So okay. For B1, long-term solution, master classes plus actually being on the ground on top of actively being on social media plus traditional media. Short-term solution, tapping on influencers. Who said this? Which group? Okay, so that group, Ustaz Ridwan's group, Ustaz, you can. Maybe I'll ask you. What do you mean being actually on the ground versus not actually being on the ground?
Okay, I think we didn't expect that this would be the most important, so we are not prepared. Anyway, I think in a nutshell, what we meant by, first we believe that it should be a long-term solution where masterclass organizations, we can work together with tapping on Muslim tech network on how we can utilize social media effectively for advocacy. And being on the ground, being on the ground on top of actively being on social media. So we believe that social media shouldn't just be used the only platform where people do advocacy. The advocacy needs to be translated into offline action, offline impact. And social media has the power of mobilizing people to do offline work. And I think that is where we come up with that idea that it should be social media and offline should come together for a more robust and more practical solution in terms of what we try to find from the society. But we're also raising one of the issues that we face, that in social media, for example, sometimes the advocacy tend to be focusing on what is trending, what is popular. That's because of algorithm and so on. But at the same time, we need to ensure that whatever that we do, it doesn't make us neglect what is on the ground, what the society in Singapore actually needed. Sometimes we are too fixated with all the global advocacy work that we actually forget about our neighbors, people next door, what exactly needed. So there's having that masterclass and programs to actually educate our community on the need of these other issues that we need to face, and having the social media capability and capacity building is very important so that we can do more advocacy work that is more effective.
Thank you so much. And Ustaz Ridwan is now working at a big social media company, so he knows what he's talking about in terms of the algorithms, and inshallah he'll be willing to conduct that masterclass also, inshallah. Okay, so thank you. So I think it's related to the second one as well, conduct educational training, and then conversations must be moderated or facilitated. Which group was this? No group wants to. Oh, okay. So I have a slight concern about the second part of the statement, and maybe you can elaborate. Conversations must be moderated or facilitated. Don't you think we have enough moderated, facilitated, curated dialogues and conversations in Singapore? Do we need more of those as well?
Yeah, hi. I'm speaking from my experience running Lepak conversations, and I believe this is specifically for social media because social media is an unregulated space. There are basically no guidelines, and that's why there should be moderation and facilitation to ensure that it's a productive discussion. People don't get emotional. People don't get offensive or hateful. Yeah.
Who should be doing the moderation in your ideal scenario? In your group's ideal scenario?
I think what we discussed is that it should be appointed by people. For us, social media is not just limited to Instagram pages, Facebook pages. There are also like WhatsApp groups. So we think that it should be appointed upon by everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. The moment she started with, from my experience at Lepak conversation, I cannot argue with that already. So, anybody else wants to add in on this? I mean, social media is a reality for us. Many of us have taken part in arguments online. Some of us against each other here in this room. We've done it before, so I'm sure this is something that you guys have talked about as well. Yeah, carry on.
Hi. Something our group talked about when we also talked about like workshops on social media or masterclasses is actually a sum of a lot of things we've also said. So it's also related to the third problem statement where these masterclasses should include how to have adab, how to fact check, how to research, how to design, how to have a voice, but also how to be unpopular. So we talked about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as the exemplar of the person who was definitely cancelled, but definitely charismatic and compassionate. So he's the guy lah to look to. Yeah, and even in the context of social media, I think the values that he showed can be applied in a social media workshop and a wider workshop on social change, which includes a social media component. And this masterclass on advocacy, which includes an offline component, will include things like grant writing, fundraising, which other people mentioned before, but also like what kind of change to look out for, how do you know you're making an impact, and how do you measure? So that kind of masterclass is just an elaboration of based on what we talked about. Thank you.
Sorry, sister, you are
Hazika.
Hazika. So who should be the one conducting this? It seems like the person that or the persons you're looking at have to master social media, be an influencer, be an ustaz or ustazah at the same time. So which organization or organizations are we looking at to be doing this for us?
I think different people have to come together, probably. You can be one of them.
Okay, good answer, good answer. Okay, so yeah, carry on, sir.
Ubaid Ali from Critical Problem Association, one of the IMO organization. So to answer that question, actually, I think it's a very good suggestion by Ustaz masterclass. I think we talked about the controversies going on in the social media. I mean, like sometimes it's like a biased action, sometimes it's like a provoked actions. So how to contain, how to filter it and understand that. I mean, rather than impulsively reacting with the incidental basis, I think have a good visionary knowledge on religion as well as on the technology. I think so. If to answer your question, masterclass should be a hybrid of both, right? And not I know how to react on social media doesn't mean that I will be able to answer the perspectives coming from religion or culture, right? So I should be combined to have both knowledge to become an advocate or ambassador for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sister.
Sorry, just wanted to add, there's a BBC reporter, John Butt. He's a convert, and he's a strong advocate of educating people who are already educated in the deen, so they have already done the whatever forms of learning, whether traditional or university, and then educate those people in media, in storytelling, podcasting. So start with people who have foundational knowledge in the deen, perhaps, rather than but we don't usually think of madrasah students as the best media students, but that's something he advocated for in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Zul, carry on.
Yeah, actually I was wondering about these master classes. Who actually will attend these classes? And what is the mode of these master classes? Are you talking about institutionalizing those classes in mainstream schools, in madrasas? I don't know. Because it feels to me like, I mean, offhand, right, just hearing master classes, I'm just thinking like, you're trying to convince your pakcik to attend a master class on how to conduct themselves online. I don't know. And on top of how these master classes are going to be conducted and who's going to attend, who should attend these master classes? If you ask me, I think leaders should attend, political leaders especially. I think they need that a lot. So, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so that's an excellent point. Although I'll let the slightly ageist remark slide. So excellent. So when we are talking about these ideas, right, master classes it's not abstract. I think it can be concretized. But in terms of reach, are those the people? Are the influencers the ones who are creating this polarization online? And even if the influencers are educated in this way, do we assume that their followers will also, I'm sure there will be a downstream effect, I'm sure there will be, but how much of it? Yeah, something for us to think about. Yeah, carry on. Encik Nailul. By the way, the facilitators and the committee, the panel members, if you want to speak, please carry on.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sorry. I have a slight problem when we come to the issue of removing emotion from our engagement. Because in this age of AI and technology, the reason for our humanity is our emotion. To be passionate is about being emotional. So I don't think we want to remove emotion from our engagement. We don't want to neuter our humanity. The question is, how do we develop a culture of positive engagement, right? So because if we are not emotional about what we do, we will not advocate at all. So I think it's more a question rather than an answer, and maybe a worry, that's all.
Thank you, Encik Nailul, for that reminder. Dr. Nawab?
Sorry, I just want to add to this discussion on social media. I think a lot of the resources in terms of how you conduct yourself online is already available on various tech platforms. So Facebook, for example, has a safety sort of center. You can go and have a look at, how you engage, how do you report, for example. People actually don't know that, when they feel like they're being bullied or there's hate speech targeted at certain communities, they don't know how to report. And all those tools are actually available. And I think sometimes it's just, letting people know how this can be done. I'm sure across all the tech platforms, this is the case as well. I think in terms of just a small point, tech companies also do a lot in terms of engaging community leaders, for example. There is, I believe Google has this, YouTube, Facebook, a community leadership certification that, in the case of Facebook, Meta Blueprint provides for it. And all of this is available online for free. And sometimes it's just about doing it rather than sort of organize or reinvent the wheel in terms of having a master class of sorts. I think these resources can just be made, more available to people, or at least to be highlighted better across the Muslim community in Singapore.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nawab, sorry, can you remain standing? So Dr. Nawab, of course, is at a huge social media company as well. So you are right, so Facebook has all those resources, but wouldn't you say these big companies, they also come in with certain biases that there's a palpable liberal bias, for instance, on many of these online platforms. I guess relating the two comments together earlier, so would it come from an Islamic values perspective, the stuff that's already out there?
I think that it depends on what. I think the basic tools are reporting, bullying, harassment, and so on would be something that is across the board. People might have some problems around hate speech, for example, because I think social media companies protect the rights of people according to sexual orientation and things like that could be potentially problematic. But otherwise, I think it is very neutral. I think the approach is not marked by any sort of lens. And I think given how global all the social media companies are, it has to be a global platform. So Facebook is used by 3.2 billion users, and obviously, it has to as much as possible capture, the larger audience sort of perspective on this.
Thank you.
But I have to say that in terms of the liberal bias, I think that there is a particular, the lens in which sometimes policies are created has, it's more influenced by certain countries, certain societal norms, and so on. That's a fact. And I think what is happening is that, the social media companies are also trying to capture better views from the global south and all that. That's true, there is a gap. But, it's not something that is not repairable, or that is not something that's so problematic that it cannot be resolved.
Thank you so much. I saw a hand just now. Carry on, sir.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I represent a simple and humble ground-up group called Seeds of Light. I'm here because I see how, as a majority Chinese, that I can do some things to help my friends here from an empathetic space. So we we started by volunteering to teach Chinese, 101 mentoring conversation at AMP. And now talking about masterclass, do I know how to teach? No. I know how to speak and I got friends, so there's no masterclass to me. And we advocate resilience for families. And one way to advocate is I saw people getting influencers. I've got friends who run a social media company, and he told me that for X dollars, you can bring how many influencers in. So, and there's another type of influencers who learn ropes the hard way, the school of hard knocked, and then they've got lots of wisdom. So my message is, why are we doing what we are doing is important. The rest, we will find solutions from the ground up. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, so there's a lot in what have been said. So the usage of influencers, I think, Encik Nainul said, is not possible nor desirable to remove emotions from online discussions. Then I guess how do you manage emotions? I guess it's not about removing emotions, but how do you manage it? Nabila, carry on.
I've got heart palpitations now because I just downed one coffee with lots of sugar. So that's why all this confidence is from the sugar, really. So drawing on Encik Nailul's point just now about emotions, right? Yes, it is very, very difficult for us to just extract the emotions out of our bodies, you know, and naturally we would want to respond in a very emotional manner. So just now what my group mentioned was, it's about intentions. Everything draws back to our intentions. What is our intention here? Is it to be heard? Is it to be the loudest person in the room? Or is your intention to hear a different perspective so that it will help you shape better programs or shape better advocacy thingies out there? So I think that's an important point. And with intentions, you know, that's the core of ourselves. And our intentions might waver whenever we meet people, and our intentions will also be further enhanced, or like the nuances of it. We, as long as we understand, sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, it's the sugar, really, it's the sugar. Do you guys get that, the sugar high thing? I think another point that we brought up was also about diversification and education. With education, by meeting a diversified group of people, we will be able to hold better conversations, better discussions, and also we will know what our personal objectives are and what other people's objectives may be. And that might drive our emotions somewhere. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Nabila, can you continue standing? And I'm speaking for a friend, okay? So everybody starts from good intentions, or most people. But when you start engaging in these online spaces, right, you can't help it, if you're human, to be affected by whether it's the nastiness of somebody else and you get nasty in response, or whether you are just, you see this adulation, right, from the likes and shares. You can't help but get affected by it. So how do we deal with that, even if you start with the right intentions?
Your intentions will waver on confirm one, right? Your intentions will be like, hey, how come I only get 10 likes instead of 100 likes or whatever likes that I've already imagined it to be? And that's precisely why we need to hang out with the right group of people who will just kick you and tell you like, hey, remind you of your intentions, and so that you can recalibrate and go back to the whatever intention it might be. So, buka aib sendiri, So, I, like Walid, I also love checking my likes and the amount of shares and all that. You know, I spend a considerable amount of time on my Instagram trying to make sure that I get my message across. I did a couple of migrant worker stuff last time, and I realized that, you know, I was spending 10, 12 hours designing all these posters. But the posters are all very, very simple. And just now, one of my team members brought up a very important point. Yes, I spend a considerable amount of time on that. But the amount of time that I spent trying to figure out what my cause is, finding the right words and all that, isn't that also something that is important? And at the end of this whole migrant worker project that I did, I left with a new set of skills. I left with a new set of knowing how to converse with people. So, yes, yeah, your intentions waver and all that, but
if you surround yourself with the right people, you hopefully, inshallah, will divert back.
Thank you. And
Can
I
I
think,
sit down?
Yeah, carry on. Sorry. So I think the 13 votes suggestion as well. So about moving, well, I guess maybe everything is hyperbole. I hope, because it's not possible to move everything offline, but moving a substantial amount of our interactions offline, I think would really help. Thank you, Nabila. So final thing to discuss. 10 votes, B3, create pervasive, coordinated online and offline campaign on ADAP. We focus on values of modesty and compassion. Have events where we test such ADAP with safe spaces, events, and incentive. Which group was this? Yeah, okay. By the way, the groups that haven't spoken, feel free to speak as well. Yes, I'm looking at carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so this is for the third problem statement on lack of adab. So we highlighted modesty and compassion, or haya and rahmah, as major Islamic values that are not talked about. And when we talk about modesty, it's often to do with women, but haya applies to all, and that's why it can be a focus of a very large campaign that does deal with social media. But I think this idea that we came to was also a result of like the other things we talked about. For example, trying to modify our education by instilling a culture of debate, what critical engagement looks like, what a good argument looks like. And in debate, for example, emotion can definitely come into play. It's part of persuasion, it's part of rhetoric. But maybe that's not part of our regular curriculum. So we did talk about education before we reached this kind of organically, where perhaps in schools also there could be more that could be done about critical thought and critical engagement, which should cover adab and persuasion and charisma and compassion. And at the same time, these sort of events where we test such adab perhaps we have more debates where people are forced to, or assigned a position so that we learn to think from different perspectives. And then we also talked about safe spaces in another post, where when we say safe space, right, we really also mean accessible, like maybe there's a child minding facility so that women can attend, translation services so that it's multilingual. One of our participants here talked about how he was grateful that the play was not entirely in Malay so that non-Malay speakers could actually follow. So when we say safe spaces, we also are aware that safe spaces can be echo chambers. So I think how to build a safe space is a difficult question, but some things we talked about are like translation, child-minding disability maybe, and these are the offline events that can be part of a large campaign.
Thank you so much. So the first suggestion, education, so more work for the teachers. Second, the child-minding services, making it more accessible. I think that's something extremely practical, can be done with will. And I hope at the next AMP event, LBKM events, we will have those sorts of services. Inshallah. I mean, that's something for us to strive towards at least. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brother Sham.
Thanks. Assalamualaikum. Yeah, so Shamir. So so I'm actually a founder of a software company, so I write algorithms for a living. And the thing about social media, they're all software apps, right? And it's obviously tuned to promote the objectives of the platforms. I mean, no offense to my friends working in social media companies too. So, they're basically fighting for attention span, and we know for a fact that emotional rants, certain emotions, anger, these are very good for business, right? And it will uptrend, right? So the way we should therefore handle social media is to get out of the app, right? We got to break the cycle. So one of the, basically these echo chambers they've been creating. So one of the interesting things I see in the US, which is arguably the most divided, polarized first world community now, is they started experimenting with this meet the other type of events. So like you have like red versus blue, you've got pro-life meets the anti-life, right? So this gives a face and humanizes the other so that they stop demonizing, because when they're on a rant, they are basically seeing an avatar and, it's some imagining in their head, and it's very easy to, to shoot down this straw man, right? But when that straw man becomes real, it's talking back, right? And it can be like a surprise thing. Aha, this is the guy, the archetype you've been slamming all this while. And suddenly, they are grounded, right? It becomes real, right? So I think having this, and it shouldn't be a rude shock like how they do it in the US, okay? It could be like, online, this thing, then maybe do like a Zoom thing to like, okay, and then you meet offline, and then you actually now can put faces to the names and the avatars. Then when you are online, you should be better behaved, right? Yeah. So I think broadly, this is what our group was thinking about as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, brother. So I definitely agree with Shamir. And when you are in person, you're discussing in person, there is a sort of decorum that doesn't exist when you're offline. So the question is, how do we realize that having these in-person debates, discussions, which can be robust, and hopefully can set examples to the community as well. And I'm thinking probably that's something AMP can facilitate as well. So, Brother Hazrul, you can go first, and hopefully after this, somebody from that table, Dr. Johannes, your table, after this, somebody can speak.
So I'm trying to address problem statement 3 and 2 at the same time. I really don't know how to solve the second problem as an organization, as a community, right? But the third one, what is culture? Basically, it's something that you do consistently that becomes a culture. And everybody here in this room has an individual responsibility of fostering or inculcating a culture of respect and constructive criticism or debates online. Because if we don't do that in the first place, then we can forget about the statement. Because what is reconciling the community in complex and potential divisive issues? We're talking about two people from opposite ends, and talking about what Abang Nailu said earlier about, not wanting to dehumanize or not trying to be unrealistic about taking out the passion part, right? But what is reconciling? Trying to go to the middle ground. So everybody here has an individual responsibility to step out of the echo chamber and trying to, like what Jamie said, to meet the other. And I don't know if an organization has the willpower to do this, like engage with LGBTs, for example, right? But we each have an individual responsibility to spend some time to ourselves and talk to another person from the opposite end, and just to listen to their perspectives. We may not agree with them, we may not even reconcile, but okay, we may not even reconcile, but it's a step closer. Right? That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Hazrul. I'm not from Pergas, but I know that Pergas did something like that last year, when even in their report they had one section on LGBT individuals, and they did interviews with the Muslim LGBT individuals as well. So you can check out their report. So somebody from that table, and then we'll end off on that note. Okay? So no pressure to the last person. Nobody? Yeah, carry on.
So what shall I comment on, good sir?
Whatever you want to say on social media, yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Just to answer that charming gentleman over there, there is actually a really good book that I've read quite recently. It's by Edward de Bono, if you've heard of him. He talks about the 6 thinking hats, and he's absolutely spot on. That I think emotions it's inextricable. You cannot remove emotions entirely when you're having a certain discussion. And okay, so I personally think, I'm in the midst of building a business, and when you expand a business from one entity to two entity, the problem doesn't just multiply by 2, it compounds. And then as the company gets bigger, you realize that a lot of the problems that we have, the solution is already out there, mentioned by that gentleman over there and that gentleman over there. But I think what we are lacking is that vision alignment and that communication. And how do we win over the stakeholders to be able to convince them that this is the right way forward? For example, you want to do like ADAP classes or ADAP online, offline campaign and master classes. What makes you think these people wants to learn about ADAP? Yeah, I think that's something for us to think about.
Thank you so much, brother. And thank you everyone for your participation. I think I enjoyed that session a lot. Hopefully all of us benefited from it. And we will collate all your suggestions and we will try to present them in 5 minutes later on, but also in the post-convention report. Okay, so thank you so much. Please, now is lunchtime and you can have lunch at your table. You can mingle with the other tables and we'll be back at 2:30, right? 2:30 we'll go to the main hall for the...
Sorry, for the facilitators, can I get your help to just wrap the mahjong paper, like with the post-it notes? If you can arrange the post-it notes, that will be great. That means arrange the post-it notes according to their clusters, and then after that you fold it up and then hand it over to me. Thank you so much.